All right, you guys. That looks better. Welcome to part 3 of my plea, my urging, my exhortation that you move your MMTLP to AST, Xquinity, whatever it is, and do it soon. So now what I'm going to try to do here is describe first the arguments for and against movement. Then I want to describe the value that I think NextBridge is worth, or MMT is worth, in a successful financial settlement with Wall Street, and what I see as the solution. But then I also want to give a value that's low and sober to tell you what I think NextBridge could be worth. None of us really know. It's oil and gas, and we are working in, not really hypotheticals, but we are working in and not really in the dark either. But we don't have complete information. Let me put it that way. We don't have complete information. Okay. I've gone through, I think, some of the predicates and the arguments and et cetera. But it's my view we should be taking our claim check in the form of MMTLP, rushing down to the transfer agent via the what do you call them, bellhop, which is our brokerage firm, and getting our real assets out of the concierge's hands or the bellhop's hands, get it off of that wheelie that's there in the lobby and anybody could come take it. All right. Let's discuss first. I got to move this stuff. I'm sorry I'm doing this without being completely prepared, but I've wanted to do this for a while, and I'm going to New York tomorrow. I've got other videos I want to do. I've got other things I have to do. And inevitably, well, I've done these lives. Inevitably, what happens is I don't get this video done. So I want to get it done. So anyway, let's just talk about what it is that we experienced. Who are the players? And let me just see if this is going to work. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. Let's just do this together. I've done it before. This will include what I see as the obvious solution. And if you go back to my videos of a year ago, December, January of a year ago, you will see that I right out of the gate, I said this is the obvious solution. But I warned that what's going to happen is you're going to have lawyers of all parties. The lawyers are going to have to educate themselves on what the problem is. And they're not going to lawyers do not take assertions. They do not take passionate pleas. They do not take, hey, it's obvious. That's not what lawyers take. They take what they can enter into evidence, and the other side will accept, or the court will accept as evidence. Lawyers make decisions based on a narrow view of what's provable evidence, as if anything's provable in this world. But anyway, how do I want to organize this? We have, Let's just do the players first. We have the main player is, and over here we have, what am I going to call it? I can't spell. And I'm sure I misspelled that. Okay, so on one side, we have Nexbridge. On the other side, we have the shorts and the counterfeiters, right? Those are the main protagonists in this Sari's tale. We have on this side, we have broker-dealers, prime brokers, hedge funds, and market makers, so-called market makers. On this side, we have, let's call them I'm going to put us in the middle. Well, no, I'll put us here. And oh, there's that thing called Firestone or something. Okay, so on this side, we have basically we have us, we are MMTLP, and we have the original Whales, Torchlight, etc. We have MMAT, and we have whatever that LLC they set up, Firestone or something, to fight. Then we have and there's one more I'm forgetting. I'm sure you might come up with other players, but this is okay. So broadly, we have the good guys and we have the bad guys, and the this is going to be hard, and the co-conspirators, and then we have the SEC, FINRA, over-the-counter, NASDAQ, and down here we have journalism and Congress. And we're all trying to get a resolution. We're all trying to get a resolution. Right? Now, everyone was hepped up and worked up, and it was obvious. And we're going to Congress. We're writing letters, and I joined in, and I'm not quitting. But I think we have to face the fact that somebody said 500 days, but it's over a year, well over a year so far, and nothing's really happened. We've made great progress. And I'm not going to talk about it now because I'm going to try to keep this as the final video on this little series. But I'm really excited about David Nunez and DJT Stock. And on top of all the work from Ham to Busy to Anna Queen of Trades to Junk Savvy to the Statue of Liberty to, the people in the background and the big players. And I'm sure I'm forgetting. I don't mean to forget anyone. Okay. What do you first notice about all of this? What I notice is two things. One, that's a lot of people to get to understand what the criminals do. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people to take time out to study it. That's a lot of people to get over it's a conspiracy theory. I left off professors, but anyway, it's all right. That's one thing I noticed. Second thing I noticed, that is such a big group that, and you know what else I left out, which I'll just tell you about. I left out the legal system, but I think the legal system didn't cause the problem. And it's where it may be resolved. But I left out the legal system. But it gets to my next point. This is at least 20 different entities, but each one of them, just the broker-dealers, there's over 100 broker-dealers. So what we're talking about here is a trough for lawyers to eat on, to scarf on for a decade. You're talking about, at least in my opinion, 500 lawyers being involved here. It's probably closer to 1,000 lawyers on both sides, all sides, and all that. You've got journalists from Jim Cramer on his buy, sell show saying, hey, it's caveat emptor, like the jerk he is. You've got professors that are paid for saying, hey, this doesn't happen. You've got to convince Congress and Senate. When I write Congress here, it's in the bigger sense of the House of Representatives and the Senate. So two things I noticed: lots and lots, an army of lawyers, and two, a lot of people to convince. All right, so we've spent a year and a half so far, I don't know what the number is, over 500 days, trying to get what's called a resolution. What I'm here to tell you is that each of us can have our own personal resolution by turning in our claim check, our MMTLP shares, and gathering our asset, which is valuable, the real hard asset of ownership, a percentage ownership in Nextbridge Hydrocarbons. Okay, before I get to that, I want to give you my solution. Let me show you that one more time. This is pretty big. All right, so I'm going to give you the solution. And I'm going to tell you why there are devils or people be acting like devils on Twitter and Twitterati spaces, because there's a lot of money involved. Okay, so what's the problem? We can all agree what the problem is, I think. If there were no problem, the shares of NextBridge would have seamlessly appeared in your account on effective date, which I think was the Wednesday after record date, the 8th. But it might have been the following Wednesday. But if there were no problem, you'd already have your dividend, your shares, whatever you want to call it, of NextBridge, and we wouldn't even be discussing it. Instead, there's evidence that there were trades on Friday the 9th at $2,400 a share for MMTLP and as high as $20,000 a share. And I even heard there was evidence of trades on Monday the 12th. Well, if that's so, there was going to be a short squeeze, but we'll get into that discussion in a second. And maybe right now we'll do it. But anyway, the problem is, I'm going to give you a big number. You can chop it in half. You can chop it by any percentage you want. There's two reasons I'm giving you a big number. One is I believe it. Two is I want the lawyers on the other side to realize how much risk there is out there. You're saying, why didn't you draw this up before you started your video? You're taking so long. Well, I'm actually thinking about it as I go, so tune in for somebody more organized than I am. All right, so here's our problem, and I'm going to state it this way. You can have your own number. In the red, there's 1 billion accumulated counterfeit shares, non-existent shares sold by the criminals who are well represented on Twitter. 1 billion shares that have accumulated from short counterfeiting, non-existent shares of Torchlight, MMAT, and MMTLP. There's 165 million real shares of NextBridge, and this is why the total is here, I'm assuming that there's 1,165,000,000 shares of MMTLP in our brokerage accounts, in broker dealers' accounts in the United States of America. So cash, hard cash was put up at settlement, and what was given back was 165 million real, so to speak, MMTLP. It never was supposed to trade, but the reason I'm saying real is there are approximately 165 million available shares of NextBridge that are real. So for cash payment of 1.1 billion shares of stock, there were only 165 million that are real. The rest are counterfeit, placeholders, and IOUs. And Wall Street doesn't give a crap, doesn't care. Okay, so that's the problem. There's 1 billion shares of MMTLP that are fake. Like I'm saying, you can cut that in half. You can cut that in any way you want. But I'm using 1 billion simply because I've heard it's over 600 million. I've heard it's over 1 billion. And I'd rather use the round number of 1 billion because I don't know which. All right, so let's just for calculation purposes, let's take 1 billion shares. I want you to understand the magnitude of this issue. And there's two aspects to the magnitude. 1 billion shares. Let's assume I'm right. And I don't know if I can recreate this. Let's assume I'm right. That's million, billion, 1,000 billion. This could be a $1 trillion problem for Wall Street. So no wonder people come on Twitter. No wonder people who might have shorted the stock to their disreputable clients, like a mafia, African mafia or something, warlord, are worried and out here scrambling to try to get us to do nothing. They tried to get us to push for 2 days trading. I hope that's off your list, because this is the problem they have to bury. $1 trillion problem. It could be more than $1 trillion, it could be half of that. It's a big, big problem. That's the risk here. Second risk. MMTLP froze the shorts. The shorts aren't smart. They're not talented. They're good at three things: lying, and they're pretty good at arguing and confusing and distraction. But basically, they're good at prevarication. They're practiced at the art of deception. Secondly, they know how to just hit the sell. So if a stock's going down, they hit the sell. If for some reason, like with GTII, the stock goes from 9 cents to $9, which is pretty impressive when you think about it, they know just keep selling, it'll come back down. Time and selling and the Basher's Handbook will get it back down. Yeah. And they're good at their networks, colluding, offshore money, making money out of thin air, not paying taxes. And they I think, are trained from a very young age that this is what you do. I don't know, because somehow they can sleep at night. Okay, so what's the solution as I see it? This is going to be my high solution, of course. So you've got 1 billion. The problem is 1 billion shares. Remember, they're stuck. If they got 2 days trading, they could hide it. If they could get next bridge trading, they could hide it. And they could go on la-di-da, as Annie Hall says. But the problem is there's 1.16 billion shares of MMTLP in my example. There's a seat for 165 million. So that crosses, and that's fine. That's spread out across 105 broker dealers. But where do the 1 billion shares of MMTLP go? Right now, that 1 billion shares is satisfied with promises that, there's court hearings, the system owes it to you, don't do anything, I shouldn't have to do anything, they should settle it up, where's my money, I want my money, all this stuff is in our heads. I'm telling you, it's time to act. But let's go backwards from what is the obvious solution to this problem, now that 500 lawyers have had time to bill their clients, prove how smart they are to each other, and start to see that this should be settled. Now, I'm basing this on the assumption that NextBridge is moving forward, they have real assets, and their assets are worth something. But I want to get to the solution. I will then show you where I get those values. I might have to do 4 of these. Let me just get to the solution. I'm going to give the solution and probably sign off, and I guess I'm going to have to do a 4th video on the value. Man, and I still probably won't cover all of the information. Okay. Let's just establish the sides. There's NextBridge, who has 250 million shares approximately outstanding, and they still can issue 250 million shares under their current bylaws. On the other side are your prime brokers, your hedge funds, the criminals, broker-dealers, the NSCC, the DTCC, and the United States Treasury. Okay? And I'm going to have to do a separate video on it. As I believe NextBridge has value, as that value is proven up, as Wall Street gets clear and as the lawyers get clear that there's risk, it becomes clear that, let's just assume in this story that NextBridge becomes valuable, and see, that's unfortunate. I'm going to have to prove the value in the next video. But just for now, remember that I think it was Greg McCabe put on Twitter that if the resolution doesn't start with a $600 share, that his answer is going to be not only hell no, and here's a lawsuit. So I'm just, for the sake of argument, I'm going to give you the punchline that the settlement I don't know where to write this. I guess down here. I can make an argument that the settlement should be $1,200 a share, $1,000 for the value of NextBridge, and $1,000 to get NextBridge to issue shares to cover some or all of that 1 billion share whole, $100 as a cash dividend, and $50 for the lawyer. And the reason I added 50 here is because that $100 dividend should go to all 1.16 billion shares. And I didn't want to take the time there, so it's extra costs. So basically it works out to $1,200 should be paid by these people to NextBridge to claim this 250 million shares, and in the baldest solution, to have NextBridge change its bylaws and issue another 750 million shares. $1,200 a share. Now, what else could happen? What else could happen is that NextBridge could sell the 250 million shares it has for $1,200. Remember, 100 would then go out as a cash dividend, $50 would go to the lawyers, and $50 is a bit of a buffer because the dividend would have to go to everybody, NextBridge and MMTLP, and I'm sure I'm leaving out some other costs. So what does that leave for NextBridge? That leaves for NextBridge $1,000 a share. In the easiest example, they only issued 250 million shares because that's what's authorized here. And they get $1,000 a share. Now, what Drew was saying yesterday is if you get your shares, you're not going to get the value of the settlement. Well, if NextBridge were to issue shares for 1,000 net, that's the value. That's the value of, that's the cash they brought in net, $250 million. Sorry, it's more than that. 250 million shares times 1,000. It's a lot of money. Yeah. $250 billion they have. $250 billion. But the original shares become worth that $1,000 as well. And because I'm doing this backwards, this valuation seems incredible to you, but I've done calculations where that number comes up. And if, in fact, the reserves in the ground, oil prices are higher, we're further down the cycle for oil, that's a realistic number. I'm not promising. It's a sort of a calculation, more of a prediction than anything else. But this is an example. So if NextBridge were to sell the 250 million shares for a net $1,000 a share, if your shares are at NextBridge, your shares are starting out worth that $1,000. Now let's go to the next step. If they have $250 billion in their treasury, what are they going to do with it? They could go acquire Carrizo, Apache. They could probably go acquire, Fisker cars, and they could acquire revenue around the world, properties, gold, whatever, gold properties. They could make cash distributions. But my point is, a company with a management team like NextBridge, with an asset like the Oro Grande, and all of a sudden, in my example, $250 billion in cash, they can go acquire properties around North America, around the world, companies, and they can make the share price of NextBridge come in at $1,000 or $5,000 a share. Now, my example may be extreme, but it's to get the point across. Even if it's half of this or a quarter of this, it's a big, big deal. Now, the lawyers will require everybody to sign a release, but the lawyers are going to get rich, bloody rich. $50 times a billion shares, well, you can do it. It's $50 billion. Maybe they'll take less than that. Lawyers are going to get rich because they exist. They went to better schools than you did. They think they're smart. They exist. They filed it. They should get paid. I don't know how the hell. Their work is less difficult than building a building, replacing a bridge. But hey, let's pay them. Okay, so they get paid. A dividend goes out that's probably worth more than what you paid for the shares. Now, what's the problem? What's going to really annoy you about this resolution? Well, you know what's going to annoy you? You know what's going to annoy you? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I've used all the colors I have. All right. What's going to annoy you? What's going to annoy you is that FINRA will be off the hook. The SEC will be off the hook. All these players down here will be off the hook. Over here, the prime brokers, there'll probably be 1 or 2 prime brokers that fail, but the prime brokers will have to disgorge the money they have that they've been holding in their accounts for this resolution. Hedge funds, if the authorities can locate the money and the criminals, the shorts, will have to give up everything. And this will hurt. There will be some assets lost here, but I think a lot's hidden. Your broker-dealer will have to cover up to some level, and my guess is they'll stop it at the insurance level. But the other thing they'll stop, because they own Congress, they'll say we're too big to fail. So then it'll go to the National Securities Corporation. I don't know if I said that correctly. But anyway, it'll go there. Then it goes to the DTCC, and if it's too big, it'll go to the Treasury. Now, if it's $1 trillion, you can panic and say, well, where they're going to get the money? This is how. It comes here. But you can also panic, say, that's going to bring down the system. That's not, to me, that's not likely. It will bring down 1 or 2 prime brokers. It might bring down a broker-dealer. It'll definitely bring down hedge funds and criminals. But that trillion will move from one brokerage firm to another. It'll stay inside the larger broker system. So to go to the point, the DTCC is comprised of all of the broker-dealers, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and all of them. So if Morgan Stanley loses $1 trillion, it comes out and it goes to Goldman Sachs for $1 trillion. The DTCC still has in its accounts and in it under security that same total number. So I think the system will survive this settlement. The problem is the prime brokers, other than the ones that go down, will not go to jail. Hedge funds will not go to jail. The criminals will not go to jail. The broker-dealers will not go to jail. Nothing. Why? Because the lawyers are going to require releases. So in order to get our $1,000 a share value and have a company which is not beholden to the DEI and the woke agenda that the Paulson funds and the Citadel Fund. I'm trying to think of all the funds. Whatever. I don't want to pick on any one name. But out of Wall Street, like State Street, those kind, they give money, but then they control the corporate agenda and how it's spent. NextBridge won't be in that position. They'll be flush with cash. They'll be private. And they can build up their company or sell themselves, make cash distributions. Now, this number may seem fantastical, and I would argue settlement would probably come in between somewhere. But in the next video, I'm going to try to come up with this number on a reasonable basis. I'm also going to try to come up with a low number. But what I want to finish this video right now with, if you turn in your chit, which is MMTLP shares, and you get you receive your real asset, which is NextBridge shares. Turn in your chit, get your belongings. In a settlement, which takes care of MMTLP, the value of your shares of NextBridge will be equal to, at least out of the gate, to the value of the MMTLP cash. The second thing is they're going to have so much cash, they can increase the value per share or make distributions. And now I'm going to make two assertions that I'm not a lawyer, but I believe will happen. If they make cash distributions, because Greg McCabe's in charge, he'll make it to the real NextBridge and to the MMTLP. It'll be to everybody. I believe he will make that part of the settlement and a part of the releases on all parties. The second thing I wanted to say just slipped out of my head on that. Yeah, I'll let that one go. Now, what does this do for NextBridge? They're not going to need cash. But I think NextBridge has been held back a bit by the threat of this litigation. This allows everyone to move on. We don't get the thrill of seeing everyone in jail, and possibly the fact of this fraud never sees the light of day. But in return, we're bloody well paid off. That's what I see happening. I forgot what I was going to say about the settlement. Yeah, anyway, I'll try to remember it for the next video. Anyway, thank you for watching. Part 3 of 4, it looks like. The next video, I'm going to show you why NextBridge is worth something now and why it's worth potentially a lot in a settlement. So we'll see you in the next episode. The exciting tale of the underdog versus Wall Street. Bye.